Welcome back to another lesson with me, Mr. B. In today's lesson, we're going to wrap up learning about a few more literary devices that will be important to any narrative or short story.
So the goal for this lesson is to review or learn about literary devices that are important to a narrative. Starting with sensory details, these are known as the five senses, right? Sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste, and they're used to engage the audience. This is when the author uses descriptive language to make the reader feel or imagine the senses as they read. And artists use sensory details in all kinds of ways. In narrative specifically, like if you're listening to an audiobook or maybe even watching a movie or playing a video game, we have musicians, right, who intentionally have sounds that make you feel cold or make you feel scared. And in that same sense, authors use language to make us feel those same emotions to get us into the room of where the character is, especially varying on the different points of view that we just learned about. And oftentimes to get us to feel what the character is feeling. And so character is the representation of persons in a narrative and dramatic works, briefly describing some recognizable type of person. So oftentimes characters are someone that we can relate to, right? Usually they will portray emotions, characteristics or traits, things that are human and that we can relate to. And so we end up with characters that are known as the protagonist or antagonist. And we're going to use Endgame as an example here, with Tony Stark as the protagonist, which is the chief character in a player's story, and who also might be opposed by an antagonist. And we'll use Thanos as the antagonist here. This is the most prominent of the characters who oppose the protagonist or hero, heroine in the dramatic or narrative work. And so, of course, we know that there are multiple protagonists or characters that could take this place of Tony Stark on the slide. We know there are a handful of antagonists, but these two very much contrast each other, right? Characters can be round, flat, dynamic, static, and so each character plays a certain role in a story. A round one would be one that's well thought out and intentional. They're designed to grab the reader's attention. This might often even be the protagonists themselves because of the things that they're experiencing in the story. Flat characters are more of your side characters or support characters, maybe two-dimensional, in a way that they might not change, kind of like static characters. Pretty similar, where there's nothing really going on with this character, they're kind of just there to help develop the protagonists themselves. Whereas with the opposite of that, if a character changes or grows throughout the story, that is known as a dynamic character. So if we look back over here in the previous slide, just like with Iron Man, Tony changes throughout the entire movie of Endgame, right? We see him go from self-centered to selfless, and we even see that throughout the entire MCU series up to this point. It's his whole character arc. Sometimes that may even be the focus or recurring theme of a movie. And so that brings us to theme, which is a topic recurring in a number of literary works. Themes are often described in more abstract terms and often emerging indirectly through the reoccurrence of motifs. So the word motif is just another synonymous word with theme. And if we look over here with Avatar: The Last Airbender, if you've ever seen this episode, it has a bunch of short vignettes, which is a bunch of short stories, essentially. And each of them have their own theme. So like with the Tale of Momo, this one is about this flying lemur monkey thing trying to find his flying bison best friend, if you don't know the show. And there's no dialogue. It's just, animal chitter. So the artists here definitely have to evoke that sort of emotion of loneliness that we see over in this last panel of Momo trying to find his best friend. And in the bottom right side, we have the Tale of Iroh, where we've seen this example with internalized oppression. He's giving advice to the vagabond or the homeless guy, the thief that's trying to mug him. He finds there's a little boy and he sings him a song about a soldier. And ultimately, he's flower shopping. He's doing all these things because he's celebrating his son's birthday at the end. And what do these two stories have in common? Both of these vignettes set the mood or tone of this episode. And the tone, in this case, could be loss, loneliness, love. And so tone and theme are intertwined with each other. And the tone that's being set is often designating the mood or atmosphere of a work, the author's attitude to the reader or the subject matter. So like with the two panels we just looked at, the tone was definitely sad. It was lonely. In this case with the Ice King, he's saying, I'm tired of looking at this face. Without context, he's already setting the tone that could be interpreted in multiple ways. This episode is sad, angry, upset, tired, insecure, and that's just only part of the context that we know. Imagine if you had the entire episode, what could that tell you about the theme or tone? Let's take a moment to reflect and practice what we just learned. So if you go over to the next slide on Nearpod, it should be slide 21. I want you to take what we just learned about points of view, sensory detail, characters, theme, tone, And I want you to write a short paragraph about describing a person completing an action in a specific place. And so you can see the reference image that's over here on the right side. It's an excerpt from one of the stories we'll read, Her Ugly Nose in Mumog. And so you just write your response in here. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just write a little something about maybe even you yourself completing a small task at home or the activity that you're doing right now. What are you doing right now? And describe that yourself. The example in here, you can take a look at it. It's just, again, a brief excerpt from the story, and it doesn't have to be structured this way. You can just write it in paragraph form. If you jump ahead over to the next two slides, there's actually some examples of prompts. I don't know if you can't think of anything like eating Korean barbecue or a family member making your favorite food or a day at the beach. There's a student example here of someone who ate Korean barbecue that you can take a look at as well if you want some inspiration on how to go about doing this free write. So make sure you complete that writing activity before moving on to the next lesson. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.